Hi, I'm Neha Matthews, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. On today's episode, we're going to discuss the Tamil Nadu government's new digital vault idea. We're also going to be looking at why police forces have been asked to infiltrate certain WhatsApp groups. But first, how India's abortion laws have been changed. For many years, India's abortion law, formerly known as the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971, has been challenged on various grounds.
In a landmark ruling in September, the Indian Supreme Court allowed a 13-year-old rape victim in Mumbai to terminate her 31-week pregnancy. Yet, the same court in July ruled that a 10-year-old raped child should not be allowed to abort at 28 weeks. Why did the families of these children...
With the availability of modern medicine, the MTP Act has been seen as archaic and restricting women's reproduction rights. Here's a few things we should know about abortions in India. In 2015, a study in the Lancet Global Health by Guttmacher Institute and IIPS estimated that 15.6 million abortions were performed in India just in 2015. Of these, it is known that in India, the majority of abortions happen outside health clinics, since just 10% of the abortions in India are notified. Now, unsafe abortions, in fact, account for almost 8 to 9% of maternal deaths in the country. So in view of this healthcare crisis of unsafe abortions, amendments to the abortion law passed by the Union Cabinet recently has come as a breath of relief to many. What changes have been made in the Act, and how will it benefit women? Abantika Ghosh, who covers health for the Indian Express, joins us to explain. So, Abantika, the amendment to the 1971 Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, which we colloquially refer to as the Abortion Act, it's been pending for years, and finally it was cleared by the Union Cabinet around end of January 2020. I wanted to talk to you about both the Act and the amendments. Now, before the amendments, could you first explain on what conditions women in India could seek an abortion?
Yeah, so under the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971, a pregnant woman could seek abortion till 12 weeks if the doctor is convinced that there is a need for abortion. That's a pretty straightforward thing. The pregnant woman could also seek abortion till 20 weeks if two doctors are of the opinion that A, if the pregnancy continues, it would involve a risk to her life or a grave injury to her physical and mental health, or that there is a substantial risk to the child of being born with a physical or a mental abnormality, or to be seriously handicapped, because of a congenital problem. Those were the situations in which a pregnant woman could seek abortion.
Did this have anything to do with whether the woman is unmarried or married?
Yeah, there are some conditions under which you can seek abortion. So there is a clause which says that if there's a failure of contraception, the exact words that the law uses is that where any pregnancy occurs as a result of failure of any device or method used by any married woman or her husband for the purpose of limiting the number of children, basically precluding the possibility of an unmarried woman simply asking for an abortion because at that point of time she is not ready to have the child.
So assuming there's also stigma.
Yeah, an unmarried woman to get an abortion either had to have a physical risk to her life or to the baby's life, a physical or a mental risk. So that was the clause that made it slightly regressive.
When it was passed in 1971, I think it was seen as progressive. But in current times, there's been a lot of pushback against it, saying it's endangered women, it's hindering reproductive rights. We also saw plenty of challenges to it in courts in the recent past. Why is that?
Most of the challenges in courts were for permission for abortion beyond 20 weeks. In fact, where we first started talking about the law needing a change was in 2008, when a Mumbai couple had approached the court saying that please allow us permission to abort this child, because the child, it was at that point of time a 26-week-old fetus, because that child had been diagnosed with a heart defect. That is where it started, and this went on, and finally Nikita Mehta, she was not allowed to abort her baby through the entire legal process. That permission was not given, and eventually she actually underwent a miscarriage. But that is where we first started talking about the need to amend the law. One of the reasons is that right now there are a lot of advanced medical technologies available which make it easier for you to detect congenital defects earlier in vivo. So while baby is still in the body, you can decide that this baby may be born with this defect. And so as those technologies advance, there is a need for your abortion laws to keep pace. So if there is a, for example, in this case, if there is a congenital defect that is being predicted at 26 weeks, there is no point of the parents moving for an abortion at 20 weeks. So even now, see, this was a 26-week-old fetus. So even currently, if the present amendments were through, they would not have been allowed permission. They would have still had to go to the courts, but that's a different story. Also, because of the clause of contraceptive failure just for married women, that made it slightly restrictive. And first of all, we already have a lot of social biases that creep into our medical practice, the way medicine is practiced in the country. So the law actually gave a leeway to doctors to refuse an unmarried woman an abortion because there is no room in the law.
Even if it's rape, even if it's incest.
No, rape is a different question. Rape is actually accounted for even in the current law, the 1971 law. It says that if the pregnancy has been caused by rape, continuation of such pregnancy, because there is that clause, remember, that if the pregnancy continues and there is a grave danger to the mental health of the mother, then you are allowed an abortion. So pregnancy out of rape is considered to have that risk. So rape is covered in the current law. But if there is a consensual sexual act by an unmarried woman and that woman is pregnant, then by law, the doctor can say that I have no room to give you this abortion pill. And why this is a problem is also because a couple of years back, there was a study by the Guttmacher Institute which showed that 50% of pregnancies in 6 of the largest Indian states are unintended. They happen just by chance. That's a very huge number.
And how many women would that be?
The number of pregnancies is so about 14 lakh in Assam, over 1 crore in Uttar Pradesh alone. So that's a large number that we're talking about of unintended pregnancies.
And with this amendment, what has been changed in the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act?
The first change is obviously that from 20 weeks, you can now legally abort up to 24 weeks. But another change that the health ministry really pushed through was that clause about married women that's been removed now. So failure of contraception will be a legitimate reason for a woman to seek abortion, even if she's unmarried. So that marriage clause will be removed. Also, what they have done is that they have removed this gap. So, like I mentioned earlier in that Nikita Meher case, that was a 26-week pregnancy for which they had approached the court. Now, what this current law says is that if we are dealing with a fetal abnormality, then this legal ceiling will not apply. Then it is a call of the medical board, a medical board that will be constituted under the law. That board will take a call on the pros and cons of continuing such a pregnancy, whether there's a bigger risk to the mother's health in aborting the baby, or there's a bigger deficiency in the child's quality of life if the pregnancy is carried through. So those sorts of things the medical board will decide. So this 24 weeks then doesn't apply. So this will basically ensure that currently anybody beyond 20 weeks has nowhere to go to but to the court. This will effectively limit those litigations and take the pressure off the courts to decide. There will be a separate system to decide when it is about fetal abnormality.
I was wondering how the response to this amendment has been. Do doctors and activists believe it will reduce the number of unsafe abortions, like you mentioned?
Yes, they're hopeful it will reduce the number of unsafe abortions. What they would have also liked is that if the provider base was widened. So I'm also told by my sources that the format in which the bill has been cleared by the cabinet, there may be some changes in it after this, and there may be some fine-tuning happening. But what activists would also really like in the abortion bill is a widening of the provider base, because we are very short of trained doctors who can do abortions properly. So there are huge numbers of deaths that happen in India every year because of unsafe abortions. In fact, in a 2016 study published in the Lancet, it estimated that the abortion rate is about 47 per 1,000 women in the age group of 15 to 49 years. But there is a very high number of unsafe abortions. That is something that has been a big concern for India. And that is why activists wanted this provider base to be widened.
Keeping a watch on universities where people may indulge in activities threatening the country's integrity, infiltrating their WhatsApp groups. These are among the many initiatives listed in a note circulated to top police officers in states after the annual conference of Directors General of Police and Inspectors General of Police. Are these directives standard procedure though? Srinath Rao, who covers crime for our Mumbai bureau, joins us to explain. You've covered this annual conference, which is held with DGPs and IGPs in the police force, and Prime Minister Modi has been a part of these conferences. Could you, to start with, tell us what these conferences are all about?
The conference in Pune last December was the 54th annual conference of the Directors General and Inspectors General of Police of each state and union territory, and also chiefs of the national policing agencies, interacting, addressing each other, and with the Prime Minister and Home Minister spelling out the vision for how they expect the police forces to function over the next 1 year. Since 2015, this government has taken the conference to different parts of the country. They've taken it out to Delhi. We've had it in Gujarat in 2018 and Pune last year. And it's now a 3-day conference. You have committees of senior-most IPS officers. They're divided into subcommittees to make presentations on diverse subjects: counter-terror, cybercrime, left-wing extremism, narco-terrorism. And at the end of these deliberations, there's a set of, say, action points that are put on paper, which also derive from the Prime Minister's address to the police. And this is basically what the police stations across the country are expected to implement.
And when you say these, set of action points or directives, could you give us some examples of this in the past?
In 2016, the timing of the conference was about 3 weeks after the demonetization announcement. So one of the foremost action points was to ask the police to ensure the goals of demonetization succeed, to ensure that black money does not come inside. Also, interestingly, another action point for the police that year, for 2016-17, was to push or nudge people to use cashless services or transactions. And this was already, although happening in ways that the Bombay police also started its cashless e-challan system, whereby you pay your traffic fines through credit card. But this was one of the prominent action points from 2016. In 2018, the police was asked to publicize, this was in Christchurch terrorist attack. The Prime Minister wanted the police forces to publicize that Indian Muslims do not ever actively participate in what was called international terror theaters. So a lot of these action points, they're a mix of, things that happen across the country and the globe very prior to the conference, and very generic things, say monitoring left-wing extremism, monitoring the flow of counterfeit currency.
And this year seemed to be particularly significant in terms of some of the directives that came out. Could you explain what the main action points were for this year?
This year, the conference was the first week of December. The main action point to come out of that is for the police to keep a watch on universities where they believe people may indulge in or take part in activities that threaten India's integrity. I guess this is significant because unrest on campuses in New Delhi and Uttar Pradesh began, I believe, in mid-December. The other thing which the police say is routine or standard procedure is to infiltrate WhatsApp groups, to keep a watch on what people say on WhatsApp. Although this does stem from a very old community policing initiative, which has always been there through the country, whereby police stations keep a watch or just are supposed to know what people are talking within their jurisdictions. Conversations at police stations on a weekly basis, they'd call them Sunday meetings, senior inspectors holding open door meetings in different places as what has become popular. You have, say, beat marshals, constables forming their own WhatsApp groups of local residents, and just to know what people are talking about, just to gauge the mood.
And when you say, I think when the directive used the word infiltrate for WhatsApp groups, doesn't that lend to, a sense of surveillance by the police?
Yeah, it has that connotation, right? Especially when looking at the kind of news breaks we've been hearing with surveillance strategies, the spyware Pegasus. Currently, we have our own phone tapping controversy in Maharashtra. So, in that context, yes, that word does bring in a lot of context on the police actually surveilling people through WhatsApp.
So, the officers that you did talk to about this particular directive, did they mention if this is standard procedure for them?
They did. From what they've said, is that they've been doing this for quite some time in a way that it is part of the larger community policing initiative, whereby they're required to know, it's what they say. People across social, religious strata, political groups, minorities, say unions, students, they just need to be well informed of what everyone is talking about at a certain time, and just to be prepared for what reaction might come from a particular segment of society to a given incident or situation, say either in that part of the country or in any other part of the country. The way they put is, no one should be able to spring a surprise on us. We should know beforehand if something's going to happen and be prepared for that.
Pretty soon, the people of Tamil Nadu will be able to access important documents, birth and death certificates, licenses, and more in a single click through a secret digital vault. How does this idea work? Tamil Nadu correspondent Arun Janardhanan joins me to explain. Arun, so the Tamil Nadu government has come up with this sort of digital locker for citizens' documents. I wanted to ask you now how the scheme works and how it goes beyond just storing documents.
So this is actually not a mere cloud platform for people to store their documents and certificates. This is actually a transactional digital platform where the government considers many official transactions as a predictive service. For example, for a normal citizen, when the family need a birth certificate or a death certificate or a community certificate or even certain authentication of education certificate, most of these things are dealt by the government agencies or government bodies. So people will have to go to these government offices and stand in the queue, and they may have to visit several times to get a particular certificate or a document related to their identity or whatever. So in this thing, the government make it work like a predictive service, and they provide it then and there. So here, exactly when I need a certificate or when I have a problem with one of my identity documents, for example, there is a change in my name spelling in my PAN card and Aadhaar card. So this is a common problem that we can see everywhere, and we don't know whether we should correct the Aadhaar card or PAN card. Similarly, there are differences in the name of parents in our birth certificates and school certificates. Because in India, many names are pronounced in different ways, especially certain names of people from certain communities will differ. In all these cases, people will have to waste a lot of time. Sometimes they will have to bribe people or even private agents to get it done. So in this particular Tamil Nadu government project, the government gives it as a predictive service where all our certificates will be intact in a secret vault, a digital vault. So there are two ends, like one is the customer end or the citizen's end, and another is the government end. So a person who uses this service can access this entire vault through his phone or a computer. But for that, he just needs to use his cell phone number. And he will get an OTP, and that OTP will be used to open this vault. So if I have to authenticate a particular certificate, or if an institution or a private company or even a government department who want to recruit me, so they can go through this particular vault and verify my documents. So that is the entire purpose of the service, to make things easier.
So, Arun, you mentioned that the government also has access to this folder with our documents. So I have to ask, is there any concern about privacy in this case?
Well, let that be a government or even a private company that is offering me a job or whatever transactions I have to make with that particular entity. If they have to access my vault, then they will give me a request. and I have to clear that request, then only they can access that particular document.
Could you tell us a little bit about who came up with this plan? Was there a need to have a folder such as this?
See, this plan is being rolled out by the Tamil Nadu e-government department, which comes under the information technology. The idea was first mooted by Mr. Santosh Babu IAS, and the IAS officer heading it, Mr. Santosh Mitra. The government has announced the project, and there will be an official order will be issued very soon. And Santosh Babu has a track record of doing many such things in the last 1 decade or more than 1 decade, such as the very famous rural BPOs in Tamil Nadu's rural areas at a time when BPOs were making a trend in India. Similarly, there are so many other things, like he made so many departments paper-free, like digitizing the entire process. For example, the officers, he himself worked where if a driver has to apply for a leave, the officer can clear it online. There will be a terminal. Like, he's also the man who implemented a lot of open source programs and open source services throughout the collectorates in Tamil Nadu. And there is a repository of artisans in Tamil Nadu. That is again another very interesting project where you get to see all artisans in Tamil Nadu and you get to see their products and profiles. You can read their profiles, where do they live, and all such details. So these are a couple of examples for the team that has come out with this project now.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show, as always, was edited and mixed by our producer, Joshua Thomas. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.